Happy holidays, everyone. Welcome to NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/AaronRift.NoDQ. This is the final NoDQ&A video of 2024. Before we get started, I would just like to thank everyone for their continued support of NoDQ.com. And if you're watching for the first time, I hope you enjoy this video. This is the official Q&A video series of NoDQ.com. I've been doing it since 2011. Before that, there was a text Q&A, and I've been running NoDQ.com now for well over 25 years now. It's been a long ride, and there's still more to come in 2025 and beyond. Let's get to your questions. I have email questions, and also, as usual, feel free to super chat. Super chats are much appreciated. They take top priority. If you send a super chat, it will go immediately to the top of the list and will be answered right away. Now, let's get started. Ian sent in the first question. Ian has been a regular contributor and follower of the channel. Shout out to Ian. Ian says, "Hi, Aaron. Happy holidays. There's rumors that a Tribal Chief Championship title is going to be on the line between Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa at Raw's Netflix debut. What are your thoughts on the matter, and what does this mean for WrestleMania if it's just another gimmick belt?" There's absolutely no need for another championship in WWE. As several people have already pointed out, you already have the Ula Fala. That is the championship. That's what this whole thing is about. Who's the tribal chief? Who gets the Ula Fala? Why the hell are they even considering a tribal chief championship? Now, this is coming from WrestleVotes, which is a reliable source. This very well could be something that happens. I hope it doesn't, though. I hope WWE has heard the feedback. Not everybody needs to be fighting for a championship. Maybe WWE sees it as an easy opportunity to make more money, sell replica tribal chief championships, and they're just looking at the dollar signs. That might be what this is all about. They just want a tribal chief championship that they could put on WWEshop.com. That seems to be the only reason why they would even consider this, because they have the Ula Fala already. It is completely unnecessary. What does it mean for WrestleMania? Depends on how things play out. If Roman Reigns beats Solo Sikoa, will he defend the Tribal Chief Championship against The Rock at some point? Could we get Roman's Tribal Chief title up against The Rock's title that he got from Muhammad Ali's wife? Who knows? They might do that. Maybe if the main title, Cody Rhodes' title, is not on the line at some point, and they do The Rock versus Roman Reigns, they can have it be for the Tribal Chief Championship. Just have it be the Ula Fala. That's all I have to say about that. Now, shout out to the Cleaver, Colin Andrew. Great guy. Known him for several years now. Colin says, "What are your thoughts about a TNA versus NXT Worlds Collide event? Happy holidays and Happy New Year to all of the NoDQ.com family." I would not be opposed to a concept like that, an interpromotional event. I do not think it's going to happen because WWE will, as much as they like working with TNA, they're not going to have TNA talent go over NXT talent even close to 50%. If they ever did an event like this, WWE might be generous. If you have a 6 or 7 match card, they might be like, well, TNA can get one win. One win on the show, might be the opening match or something like that, but I just don't see WWE allowing TNA to beat the NXT guys at any kind of a consistent basis. If it happens, it would be like one match and that would be it. Looking at it from that perspective, should they really even bother? If it's just going to be one-sided and WWE wins the whole thing or wins the bulk of the matches, why even do it? I don't think it's going to happen. I would not mind seeing it, as I mentioned, but I think it's very unlikely. Thank you for the question, Colin. I appreciate it. Now, I have a question here from TJS, longtime No DQ contributor. Shout out to TJS. TJS said, with Triple H sticking to the 5-match premium live event format, I think it's time to bring back the brand exclusive events. This would give more stars a chance to shine, especially with so many titles floating around and the tag team titles losing their luster. What do you think of this idea? I have mixed feelings about it. First of all, I think it's a good idea in the sense that WWE has a much deeper roster than they did in 2003, 2004. Some of those single branded pay-per-views in that era were absolutely brutal. They just didn't have the deep enough rosters to pull it off. Now, one issue at the time besides that, which could still be an issue now, is the lack of a pay-per-view for the other brand. Sure, you can do Saturday night's main event or whatever, but one of the issues I had back in the day, if you had Backlash for Raw and then Judgment Day for SmackDown, then you didn't get another Raw pay-per-view until Vengeance or whatever you had in the June spot. And in the month of May, not much going on with the Raw brand. And I feel like the TV shows move at a slower pace. When there's a monthly pay-per-view, things are always moving at a faster level because you only have the 4 weeks to build up. Then it's on to the next one. But when there's an 8-week build up because you're doing single branded pay-per-views, they tend to move the shows at a slower pace, which I'm personally not a fan of. I think they have a good format, one pay-per-view a month and sticking to that. But it would be nice for the talent. They would have more opportunities and it would work out better in that regard. But it would also feel less must-see. When it's a dual-branded pay-per-view, you know you're getting the biggest matches possible combined from each brand. Very much on the fence, one way or another. I'm not sure how I feel if they bring it back or not. Shout out to Steve-O, another great guy who I've known for several years. Thanks for your support, Steve-O. I appreciate it. Says, happy holidays, Aaron, your family, and the rest of the No DQ crew / Galaxy. In your personal opinion, what do you think of using Peacock for WWE streaming over the WWE network? I'm actually surprised with the content Peacock has retained in addition to the non-wrestling content. Do you think more positivity will come towards AEW as they'll be on Max next year? I will say this about Peacock. It's decent, but I still miss the old WWE network. When they set it up in 2014, they had a great interface. I really liked it. It was easy to access everything and find all the different shows and content. On Peacock, it's a little more complicated because you have the main Peacock act, then you have to go into WWE. I'm just not as big of a fan of the interface, but they do have a good amount of content on there. And as far as AEW goes, it sounds like they're going to be slowly rolling out content on Max. It could be the same scenario as Peacock, where it might be difficult to find certain things, but hopefully over time, they'll have a nice interface for AEW on Peacock. We'll see. The jury is out on that. Hopefully it's a positive, and AEW has a great relationship with Max. Crossing my fingers on that one. This next email question comes from Dwayne Atkinson. Shout out to Dwayne. Says, who are some first-time title holders you'd like to see finally win some gold, regardless of which title in any promotion in 2025? Well, thank you, Dwayne. Chat room, I might need your help on this one a little bit. The problem with this question for me is it's hard to remember who's held a championship, who's held a singles championship, who's held a tag team championship, who's held a championship in NXT. It's just hard for me to think, oh, this guy's never held a title at any point in his career, even NXT. That person is long overdue for a championship. It's hard for me to think of people off the top of my head. I know Chad Gable had the tag team titles, but he never won a singles championship. He never got the Intercontinental title. So somebody like him comes to the top of my mind, but I know he was a tag team champion at one point. Retro brought up Michin as a pick. I mean, she would be solid. Who knows? She might end up being the next United States champion. I don't remember if she ever held an NXT championship or not, though. So, yeah, part of it is just my memory. I don't remember every championship that people have held. But, there are a lot of up-and-comers. And once they come to WWE, I definitely hope that they can win some championships. Somebody like Obafemi, obviously he's got the North American Championship, but once he's on the main roster, I definitely want to see him pick up some singles titles. Yeah, it's hard to think of people that haven't held any kind of a championship whatsoever. So, chat room, if you can think of any others that have not held anything to your knowledge, let me know in the chat room and I'll acknowledge some of those names. Kairi Sane would be a good one, as Matthew pointed out. Maybe her getting a singles championship. Again, she's at a tag team championship. Xavier Woods has been a tag team champion, but hasn't won a singles title. I think he would be another good one. And that's the thing. There's so many titles now. Like, it's hard to go through an entire WWE career and not hold a championship at some point, because there's literally so many of them. At some point, you're going to win a championship. And if you don't win a championship in WWE, then something must be wrong with you. What about Karrion Kross? Well, he had the NXT title. So again, he did hold a championship at some point in his career. But he hasn't, to my knowledge, held any main roster title at this point. Ooh, here's a good one. Jacob Fatu hasn't held any championship in WWE. The Tongas were the tag team champions, but Jacob hasn't held anything yet. Here's a good one. I agree with this one. Sol Ruka is a great candidate. I mean, she should definitely pick up a championship in NXT before she leaves. I think she's an excellent choice. Bronson Reed had the North American Championship. So, yeah, it's a tough one to answer. Dwayne was like singles championship. I mean, it's way easier to answer when you go by that. I'll just say Xavier Woods. There you go. Got another email question here from Ian. Shout out to Ian. Thank you. Says, how long is Cody Rhodes going to be out from the package pile driver angle? Is he not going to return until the Royal Rumble, or is he coming back for the next Saturday night's main event? Thank you for your content. It's good. It's been good to be a fan of No DQ and a fan of wrestling again. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Cody Rhodes will probably not be out of action for too long because he's their cash cow. He's their world champion. They obviously want him to sell the angle. It's Christmas time. Christmas time is here again. OUT spells out. Cody Rhodes will be back soon. I'd be shocked if he's not back by the Netflix Raw, even though he's on SmackDown. SmackDown's moving to 3 hours, by the way. That's January 3rd. To me, that's going to be when he's back. He will be back beginning of 2025. I would be shocked if they keep him gone any longer than that. But yes, you do want to have him sell the attack for a couple weeks and let Kevin Owens go around gloating about his injury to Cody Rhodes. So thank you for that. TJS sent in another email question. Thank you, TJS. I appreciate it. Says, who do you think is a wrestler who did not thrive because they were in the wrong era? Give an example from before 2000 and one from after. Well, before, WWE even named their DVD after him. Superstar Billy Graham, 20 years too soon. He was a sports entertainer, Superstar Billy Graham, and he was pre-sports entertainment, but he was one of the pioneers. He's a guy that I definitely think could have done well in a more modern era. Now, if we're talking about somebody recently that I think would have been better in a previous era, I think of Rick Boogs. Rick Boogs, to me, he would have fit perfectly in the late 1980s, early 90s. I felt like he was in the wrong era in 2022, 2023. I'm trying to think of some others that might have been better in this era. Definitely some of the smaller guys, some of the cruiserweights from WCW, guys like Juventud Guerrera, I think would have been better in today's era. Lash LaRue. A lot of those guys that were in WCW that could not break the glass ceiling, they might have had really good runs in AEW. Baron Corbin's a guy who I think might have been better in a previous era, maybe in the 80s or 90s. Omos would have been better in the old days. I agree with that one. Bam Bam Bigelow, I think, would have been good in really any era because he just looks the part of a pro wrestler, and he was athletic. He was big. You know, he could really do any era. I think Bam Bam would have done well today. I think he would have done good any period. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. I appreciate it. And again, the super chats, much appreciated. And if you send one, it goes right to the top here. You get the special shout out. Much love to Psycho Jet Black or Pico Jet Black, PJB, whatever name you want to use. Thank you for the super chat. Says, do you think The Rock will only do 2 matches, one with Cody and one with Roman Reigns, or do you think there's potential for more? Hey, I think there's potential for a lot of matches if The Rock wanted to come back. I think we'd all love to have him back. I think we're lucky if we get one more match from him. I think we're really lucky if we get 2 matches. We have to get 2 matches, I think. One with Cody, one with Roman Reigns. You're just leaving so much money on the table if you don't do either of those matches. Both of those matches will be among the biggest matches in wrestling history. So I can't imagine The Rock not doing those matches. But he's a busy man, and he's got a lot of things going on, and he's not that young. He's getting up there. I hope he does them, though. I think anything beyond that, you're getting your hopes up big time. But yes, there is potential. There's always potential for more because The Rock is The Rock, and he can make magic regardless of who he's working with. You could do The Rock versus Seth Rollins in a singles match. You could do The Rock versus CM Punk again. I mean, hell, you could do Rock versus John Cena one more time if they wanted to. There's a lot. There's a lot you could do with The Rock before it calls it a career. So thank you again for the super chat. Much appreciated. Now, I got a question here from Calvin Bowman. Shout out to Calvin Bowman, longtime viewer. Says, do you think Damien Priest will win the 2025 Royal Rumble match? If so, who do you think he will face at WrestleMania? I do not think Damien Priest is winning the Royal Rumble. I think there's little to no chance he wins the Royal Rumble. Now, right at this particular time, he's feuding with Finn Balor. So if you asked me right now, I'd say Damien Priest versus Finn Balor makes sense for WrestleMania. But WrestleMania is still 4 months away. That's a long time to stretch out this feud. I think they're probably going to wrap it up relatively soon. In that case, what's next for Damien Priest? I think Retro probably is on the money with this one. He'll end up in some sort of a multi-way match. He might move on to a different feud. Maybe he goes to SmackDown as part of the Superstar shakeup, and he feuds with somebody else over on SmackDown. Like, we don't need to see any more matches with Gunther. We really don't need any more matches with Judgment Day, so maybe it's just time for him to start up a new feud with somebody. Maybe he stays on Raw, feuds with Karrion Kross. You know, that could be a WrestleMania match. But yeah, I don't know at this time because I'm not sure what they have planned for him once the Judgment Day feud wraps up. Ooh, here's a good idea. Maybe Nakamura. Maybe he goes to SmackDown and challenges Nakamura for the Intercontinental Championship. That's a possibility. Shout out to Matthew, who has been a regular in the chat room. He's been on NoDQ's comment section. He's been on some videos. Shout out to Matthew. Sent in an email question. Says, hey, Aaron, so I wanted to ask, with AEW doing shows in the Hammerstein Ballroom, having to move the smaller venues for upcoming pay-per-views, and now Rampage confirmed to not be happening in 2025, is this significant? Is this when Tony finally admits it's time to downsize in an attempt to improve attendance and ratings, while finally asking for help with the booking? The booking remains to be seen. I think they realize they have to downsize at this point. The crowds have just gotten smaller and smaller. It doesn't look good on TV, especially when you go back and watch the early Dynamites. And now with the Max deal, people will be able to go back with ease and watch those early Dynamites. When you have those well-lit arenas, then you watch some of these recent shows and the arenas are darkened. There's not much noise. As I mentioned on the Collision recap I did at Hammerstein Ballroom, that place looked great for wrestling. You saw fans everywhere. It was a small, intimate setting, so they were loud. They could be heard. It was just a great vibe for wrestling. Those are the types of venues that AEW needs to be running. Now, that's not going to turn numbers around, but it helps with the presentation. It's a start. Obviously, they got more work to do than that, production-wise and just booking-wise. Will Tony Khan finally hire somebody to help him write the weekly shows and make them a little bit more appealing to people and get them hooked and bring in some new viewers? That way they can increase attendance, have more people interested in AEW, and at some point be able to start running the larger arenas again. Yeah, the problem with running one building like Daly's Place is that they'll draw smaller crowds each time. Like they were at Daly's Place so often they could barely draw there anymore. So they have to be able to travel and find different venues. And Retro, the thing about Tony Khan, what he can do is keep booking the pay-per-views. Let him write the pay-per-views. and then hire somebody to help him write the TV shows to set up those pay-per-views. Tony Khan can still book his dream pay-per-views, and he should. The pay-per-views have been consistently great. Let him keep doing that. Get somebody in there to help out and get to where he wants to go for each pay-per-view. That's what he needs. So thank you for that, Matthew. I appreciate it. All right, we got one here from Marshall Leonard. Marshall Leonard sent in this email. Says, do you think Seth Rollins will break Ric Flair's record for the most world titles? That is a tough question to answer because, number one, I don't even know what Rollins' number is at right now. Somebody in the chat room, let me know how many world titles Rollins has held at this point. I think Randy Orton is more likely. It really depends on how long Rollins wrestles, and that's a big question mark. Right now, he's apparently at 7, according to No DQ for Lifer. I don't know if that's true or not, but if that's the case, he's obviously got a long way to go. But if he can stay healthy, if he can keep going for another 10 years, then it is certainly a possibility. I mean, it really just depends on how long he's around and on top. Will he get sick of WWE at some point? He's a father now. How many years does he want to keep wrestling? It's just impossible to know. I don't think Seth Rollins is necessarily a guy that they're thinking, yeah, he's going to be the one. It'll be John Cena, but then who beats John Cena? Could it be Rollins? Could it be Randy Orton? Is there somebody else they have in mind? I mean, Seth probably has a decent shot if he stays in the business another 10 years, but nobody really knows at this point. And also, another thing that could be working against him is maybe Triple H wanting to have wrestlers keep longer title reigns and not hot potato the titles as much. Shout out to Psycho Jet Black, who sent in a $5 super chat. Psycho Jet Black's question here comes to the top of the list. Psycho Jet Black says, let's say that the scrub Darby Allin is not the guy that will defeat Jon Moxley for the world title. Then who should be that person to defeat Moxley? I don't think it should be Darby Allin, period. He is a risk taker. He is entertaining, but he's not the guy. Who is the guy? One could say Will Ospreay. I think Will Ospreay is probably the most realistic choice as far as who's going to be the guy that beats Jon Moxley. Maybe Kenny Omega, once Omega comes back, has one more run as a babyface. I could see it being Omega. And then one guy who I think is a long shot, but I'd love to see it, is Ricky Starks. Bring back Ricky Starks, make him a monster babyface. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see it. I think Ospreay or Omega are your best bets. I do not think it will be Darby Allin. So you don't have anything to worry about. I know you're not the biggest Darby fan. I don't think it's going to be him. Plus, he's going to be climbing Mount Everest. You really going to put the title on a guy who might not make it back from Mount Everest? I don't think it's going to be him. He might get a shot at the title, but I don't think he's going to win the title. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. Got one more here from Marshall Leonard. Shout out to Marshall. Hi, Marshall. Marshall says, do you think Dolph Ziggler would have been a bigger star had he come up today under Triple H's era versus the Vince McMahon era? Hard to say, but I will say this about Dolph Ziggler, another guy that I think would have done well in pretty much any era, even the 80s. I think Dolph Ziggler would have been well. Smaller guy, but hey, look at the Dynamite Kid. Dynamite Kid did really well until he got hurt in the 80s. Dolph Ziggler, he could talk. He looked great. And I think he would have at least been pushed to some degree. He wouldn't have been a top guy by any means. I don't know if there's any era where he would have been booked as a top guy, but a guy who's a good wrestler, good body, good talker, well-rounded, can sell. Ziggler is somebody that would have fit in pretty much any era. He would have done well if he started now. Would have had opportunities with AEW probably. But yeah, I don't think he would have necessarily done better than he did during the Vince era. I think regardless of what era he would have been in, he probably would have been in a similar spot. Shout out to the This Guy Experience, who sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, This Guy. I appreciate it. This guy says, who's your pick for the 2025 and 2026 Hall of Fame? I hope they do Batista. Batista's long overdue because he was supposed to be in 2020, and then we had COVID. They really should get Batista in ASAP. I really want, if we're talking my picks, these are my picks. Demolition, Ken Shamrock, Jim Johnston, Cyndi Lauper. Those are my picks for the Hall of Fame immediately. And you can have Batista headline it or whatever, but those are the names I want in as soon as possible. They are long overdue. My guess is John Cena will not be this year, but he will be 2026. I mean, yes, Rey Mysterio was inducted when he was still actively wrestling now. But John Cena, I could see them waiting one more year, let him have his final year, and then have him go into the Hall of Fame in 2026. Lex Luger's another one. Get him in right away. 2025. Thank you for the super chat again. I appreciate it. Dwayne Atkinson sent in this email question. Thank you, Dwayne. Says, if they're wanting CM Punk in a world title match at WrestleMania, what would you think his favor would have been with Paul Heyman? Great question. They're probably trying to figure that out right now. I feel like Paul Heyman and CM Punk, the whole favor angle, was done as a backup. If The Rock is not doing WrestleMania, they have that they can utilize at any point. So then if they need to come up with something for WrestleMania, they got that right there. CM Punk calls in his favor. But yeah, if they want Punk in a world title match, well, Roman Reigns would have to be world champion. So that means he either beats Gunther or he beats Cody Rhodes at the Royal Rumble. And then maybe CM Punk fails to win the Royal Rumble and has to ask for the favor and get his opportunity at WrestleMania by calling in his favor from Paul Heyman, which could happen. Roman Reigns might end up getting his title match, or CM Punk might end up getting his title match with Roman Reigns because he has that favor he can call in. And if they get The Rock and they have a different idea with Seth Rollins versus CM Punk in a rematch, even though they're doing that match on Raw, then they could always save the favor for another time. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. So Psycho Jet Black's question goes straight to the top here. Thank you, Psycho. I appreciate the $5 super chat. PJB says, what current mid-carders in AEW and WWE have the potential to break the glass ceiling and become main event stars? My picks are Pete Dunne and Will Hobbs. I think there are several guys that can break the glass ceiling that are in AEW, but they won't do it in AEW. They'll do it in WWE. Wardlow, Ricky Starks, Will Hobbs. What the hell is going on with Hobbs? They pushed him, and now he's not around again. What the hell? Definitely a head scratcher. And as far as WWE guys, Carmelo maybe? Carmelo Hayes feels like he's kind of stuck right now. I don't know if he's ever going to get past the Ricochet level, but he's a guy that I think if anybody can do it, it'll be him. And there's not really anybody else that I can see that's being held down and maybe they can overcome it. Not necessarily anybody that I can pinpoint at this very time that's currently in WWE. I think pretty much everybody in WWE right now is really where they should be. So I don't know who else I would go with. I really don't see Pete Dunne. I think Pete Dunne is exactly where he's going to be. Maybe Dragunov when he comes back. I feel like he was starting to build up some momentum, and then unfortunately he got injured. Maybe Dragunov, but again, I don't know if I see Dragunov reaching anywhere further than like that middle of the pack level. Shout out to the This Guy Experience, who sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, This Guy. I appreciate the super chat. Says, has Austin Theory reached his ceiling, or will he be like Edge? Again, I think he's reached his ceiling. I think Grayson Waller reached his ceiling. I think Pretty Deadly reached his ceiling. There are some guys that haven't really hit the ceiling. You look at Braun Breaker. He's destined for great things, but he hasn't really been stalled. Like if Braun Breaker was not being pushed, I'd be like, well, what are you doing here? Like, this guy clearly has the potential to be a top guy. What are you doing? But they're pushing him. He's moving along at a steady pace. Beyond him, Theory, I don't see them pushing Theory beyond this middle of the pack level. He's going to be a guy they can rely on, good-looking guy, can go out there, talk some trash, and then get his ass kicked by a bigger star. That's Theory's role. I don't really see him doing anything more beyond that. I definitely don't see him being Edge at this point. Thank you again. Shout out to Building Nexus, who sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you. I appreciate it. Building Nexus sent in this $5 super chat and says, could you see The Rock facing Roman Reigns at SummerSlam if he does the Cody Rhodes match at WrestleMania? They could do that. It's really a WrestleMania match, though. I think they really should do The Rock versus Cody Rhodes at the Royal Rumble and then Roman Reigns versus The Rock at WrestleMania. I feel like they shouldn't wait another year for The Rock versus Roman. Yes, they could do it at SummerSlam. Is The Rock really going to do SummerSlam, though? He wants to do WrestleMania. He wants to break the records. He wants the biggest show possible. If he's going to go out there and risk getting hurt at his age, he's going to do it at the biggest stage possible. I would say there's always a chance, but my gut feeling is he'll probably wait another year if he even does the match with Roman Reigns. It may never happen. I hope it does, but at this point, I'm not getting my hopes up. Thank you again for the super chat. Much appreciated. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. Once again, appreciate it. PJB said, will we see Brock Lesnar back in WWE in 2025? My gut feeling is no. If you put a gun to my head, yes or no, is he coming back in 2025? I am going to say no. And quite frankly, they don't need him. Yes, we could see Gunther versus Brock Lesnar, but they got Gunther versus John Cena. John Cena coming back is massive. Cena's going to be around full time. You got Roman Reigns. You got CM Punk. The only way I see Brock Lesnar coming back, first of all, depends on the Vince McMahon sex trafficking case and how far that goes and what is said about Brock Lesnar. I feel like Brock's not coming back until that's resolved. And that, as we know, legal cases can be dragged out for a very long time. This could go on for well over a year. until it's resolved, I really don't think they're going to bring Brock Lesnar back. The only way I could see it maybe happening sooner than we expect is if they're in a desperate situation, like Cody Rhodes gets hurt, CM Punk gets hurt again, maybe even John Cena gets hurt. If we have like something similar to 2015, remember when a lot of guys got injured in a very short period of time? Seth Rollins got hurt, Randy Orton got hurt. There were a lot of injuries. If that happens anytime in the near future, and you have like 3 or 4 top guys out in a short period of time, they might be like, well, maybe we have to give Brock Lesnar a call in case of emergency, break glass. But I feel like that would only happen if they were really desperate and needed somebody to come back. I think most likely we do not see Brock Lesnar in 2025. All right, back to the email questions. We got this one from Ian. Ian said, what are your thoughts on Tuesday Night Titans? And should WWE bring back the concept of it at some point down the line? I loved Tuesday Night Titans. Now, it wasn't really a wrestling show. It was a sketch comedy show. It was Vince McMahon trying to add layers to his wrestlers, give them some more personality. We had the Wild Samoans showing their cooking recipes. We had Dr. D. David Schultz in his home with his family being this jackass redneck, and then bringing a gun into the studio, shooting it up in the air, and Vince McMahon calling him a stupid idiot. We had some very entertaining moments on Tuesday Night Titans. Is there really an audience for it? I mean, again, it's not really a wrestling show. It's more like a comedy. You have the wrestlers coming in doing skits and whatnot. It's meant for laughs. I wouldn't mind if they did something like that. I don't know if there's much of an audience for it, though. But, hey, it might be fun extra content on the WWE Network. I will say this. I really liked Legends House. I'd love to see some kind of a show like that, whether it's Tuesday Night Titans or Legends House, some kind of show where the wrestlers can just goof off, show off their personalities. I definitely would like to see something like that. I just don't know if WWE feels like there's a big enough audience to justify producing it. But I loved the concept back in the day. It was great. Got another question here from TJS. Shout out to TJS. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. TJS says, what is one safe prediction for AEW in 2025 and one for WWE in 2025? And then what's a bold, daring prediction for each company? Great question here as we wind down on 2024. Some safe predictions. All right. Safe prediction for AEW. I think Will Ospreay wins the world title. I don't know when it's going to be, if it's going to be from Jon Moxley or Kenny Omega, but I'm going to say on the record, Will Ospreay is a future AEW world champion in 2025. And as far as WWE goes, John Cena breaks the record, beats Ric Flair's record. They're tied right now. John Cena takes the record. Now, Retro disagrees with me and says a bold prediction, John Cena doesn't win the 17th championship. There you go. Now, bold prediction. I think it's unlikely to happen, but I'm going to take a shot here. Shane McMahon finally shows up in AEW. Like, how do you put those pictures out there? The one with Tony Khan, which was a so-called accident. What about the picture with the Young Bucks? Like, come on. Get Shane on there. Like, I feel like it's too late to do anything with this Jon Moxley storyline, but Shane McMahon showing up and AEW is my bold prediction for 2025. Now, bold prediction for WWE. I don't think it's going to happen, and I'll tell you why. But I think people would like it. CM Punk wins one more world championship in 2025. I say it's a bold prediction because the fact that he's been injured quite a few times in AEW and WWE, I don't know if you can really count on him to be the world champion, because you need a guy who you know is not going to be getting injured all the time. Of course, they could just have it be like a 1-month title reign or something. But that's why I say it's a bold prediction. It seems unlikely, but if Punk's in a world title match, there's always that chance that somebody's going to say, you know what? Let's put the title on him one more time. Shout out to Michael, who sent in a $2 super chat. Michael's question goes to the top here. And then I got Psycho Jet Black, so stay tuned, Psycho. Michael says, how much closer does Charlotte Flair get to the record? She's one who could definitely break Cena's record. If we're counting men and women, most world titles for anybody, Charlotte Flair has a better shot than Seth Rollins. You know, I got that question earlier about Seth Rollins possibly breaking it. Charlotte Flair has a real shot, and she's getting close. If anybody breaks John Cena or Ric Flair's record, it's going to be Charlotte. So yes, I think she will not only get close, but she will break it if she stays healthy. Again, injuries can play a role. You never know, but I think she has a real shot to do it. So thank you for that, Michael. Much appreciated. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. PJB says, who is someone in NXT that could be the next big thing? Oba Femi. From the shows I've been watching as of late, he passed Trick Williams for me. Trick Williams has great charisma. Whoop that trick. It's entertaining. But I have to say, his main events without Dragunov, without Carmelo, they've been a little lackluster. But Oba Femi, man, that dude is a beast. Oba Femi is just a great athlete, great presence, looks like a badass, looks like he could break you in half, looks like a guy you would not want to run into in a dark alleyway. He's an ass kicker. That guy is money. Oba Femi is my guy in NXT that I think is going to be a major player on the main roster. Shout out to Building Nexus, who sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. I appreciate it. Building Nexus says, does Solo Sikoa get thrown out of the new Bloodline if he loses Tribal Combat? Great question. If The Rock is somehow involved in this storyline in the near future, does he interfere and help Solo Sikoa, or does he interfere after Solo Sikoa loses and says, you dropped the ball, now I have to step in and take care of business here? I would lean towards no, just because I think Solo works better as a heel. I'd rather see the scenario where The Rock helps Solo and Solo gets the rub off of The Rock. Solo's a babyface, could work, but we really haven't seen much of him as a good guy. He's mostly been a villain in WWE. I mean, maybe as the street champ in NXT, he was a little bit of a babyface for a period, but I think he's better off as a heel. So I would not throw him out of the Bloodline. I don't know if he should be crawling back to Roman Reigns. He could be on his own, but I think he's best off staying with the group and being aligned with The Rock if possible, rather than go babyface. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Emmanuel sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Emmanuel. I appreciate it. Says, what killed AEW if there's a documentary? It starts and ends with the captain of the ship. So if you did a documentary, I think Tony Khan has to be front and center. Some might say the Young Bucks. I know they're unpopular with a group of people, but without the Young Bucks, I don't think there would be an AEW. And I think for the most part, they kept their egos in check. You know, they did put over a lot of tag teams. You could put CM Punk in the documentary. I mean, definitely all the drama with CM Punk ultimately hurt the company. When Punk debuted, it was a huge deal. But then when he left, it really hurt the reputation of the company. And Jack Perry might be on there, but really it comes down to Tony Khan. You know, he's the boss. He's making the decisions, and he gets credit. He gets credit for putting them on the map, but I think you also have to put the blame on him for the decline up to this point. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you, Psycho. I appreciate the super chats. Psycho Jet Black says, sounds morbid, but which wrestlers throughout history benefited from the injuries of other wrestlers, got to take their spots, and were pushed? Yeah, that is a very interesting question as far as people getting hurt and then wrestlers stepping in. I mean, remember when Mr. Kennedy was supposed to cash in Money in the Bank and then he got hurt and Edge stepped in and capitalized on it? I mean, that was a big moment for Edge when he came in 2007. I mean, he was already well established, but that gave him another run with Money in the Bank. So he's definitely somebody, like the first person I think of. You know, I think of Mr. Kennedy getting injured and how that really hurt him. He was well on his way to being a big deal, and the injury set him back. Now, to a lesser extent, Retro brought up in the chat room, Kofi Kingston. It was supposed to be Mustafa Ali's spot, and then he got hurt, and Kofi took the gauntlet match spot. That's crazy to think of, because I don't think Ali would have reached Kofi's level. And Kofi Mania, that whole thing caught on. But yeah, that's another great example. I think of that one too with Kofi Kingston. So thank you for that. Great super chat. Great question. Very interesting to think about it, even if it is a little morbid to discuss. Jeremiah Dorset sent in an email question. We got a couple more here before we wrap this up. Jeremiah sent in this email. Hey, Aaron, who do you see becoming AEW Women's Champion in 2025? Chris Statlander, Mercedes Moné, or someone else? First of all, I think Toni Storm will get the title back, probably in Australia. But you mentioned Chris Statlander. I could see her actually beating Mercedes at World's End. Mercedes, though, potentially could move on. This could be a bold prediction, or maybe it's a good prediction, but another prediction nonetheless for 2025. I'm going to say Mercedes Moné drops the TBS title. Toni Storm wins the world title back from Mariah May. And later in 2025, maybe all in Texas. There you go. There's my bold prediction. All in Texas will be Mercedes Moné versus Toni Storm for the women's championship. Matthew, don't get mad at me. That's when Mercedes Moné becomes AEW Women's Champion. There's another bold prediction for 2025. Hopefully I didn't upset too many people with that comment, but there you go. There's my bold prediction. All right, we got one more here. If you wanted to super chat and haven't yet, this is your last chance, because I got one last email question here. We're getting to the top of the hour. So one more here, unless another super chat comes in. Marshall sent in this email question says, do you think Braun Breaker will defeat Gunther for the World Championship at WrestleMania? He has to lose the IC title first, although you could do champion versus champion at WrestleMania. But my feeling is they're going to wait a little bit longer on Braun Breaker, slowly build him up, let him have a nice lengthy run with the IC title. I see Gunther facing John Cena maybe, although there's rumors of John Cena versus Logan Paul. It just depends on what they got planned for Gunther. I don't think it's going to be Brock Lesnar, although it would be a big match. They could do it. Braun Breaker could lose it at the Royal Rumble, but Gunther might not make it to WrestleMania. Some people think that either CM Punk or Seth Rollins will win it from Gunther. Maybe Roman Reigns wins it from Gunther. I mean, there's no guarantee Gunther will even be champion. In that case, will it be Braun Breaker versus Gunther for the Intercontinental title? Who knows? We got one more super chat here from Psycho Jet Black. One last question here from PJB. Thank you for the super chats. Much appreciated. Prediction. Christian is not successful cashing in. I do not think he's cashing in. Look, Christian's been great. He's been entertaining. He's had a better run in AEW than pretty much any run of his career. That's a bold thing to say, but I think it's true. Other than maybe the peak of Edge and Christian as a tag team, I would say as far as his singles career goes, he's had his best run in AEW. But no, I do not see him successfully cashing it in. There's no good reason for him to do that. Moxley's a heel champion. You want to have your top babyface beat Moxley for the title. You cheapen that by having Christian cash in. If he's going to cash in, it should be on a babyface champion. But do you really want to take that away from the moment when somebody finally beats Moxley? I don't think it's going to happen. I think he will attempt to do it on a babyface champion at some point, but he will ultimately not be successful. So on that note, I will go ahead and wrap this up as we get to the hour. Thank you all again so much for supporting NoDQ, for saying yes to NoDQ, following throughout the year. We got another big year coming up in 2025. Netflix on Raw, WrestleMania 41, AEW All in Texas, AEW in Australia. A lot to look forward to. Should be a great year in wrestling. WWE has a lot of big plans. Hopefully AEW can be on the upswing. NoDQ.com will keep you covered throughout the year. I will see you guys for AEW World's End predictions Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on the NoDQ YouTube channel. And then, of course, AEW World's End live results coverage on NoDQ.com. Happy holidays again to everybody out there. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. I'll see you all next time. Have a great remainder of 2024 and see you all soon in 2025.